Even the Democrats polling is refuting their own narrative that, oh my God, there could be 2 Republicans in the general election.
And what they really want is to basically get base Democrats so nervous that it boosts the turnout. So there's a strategy behind saying, oh my God, there's going to be 2 Republicans and the Dems are going to be locked out of the California governor's office. Like, that's never going to happen, but they're saying that it is because they're trying to juice the turnout. It's all strategy, always these things. And they're saying that they're going to get rid of this top 2 primary now because they've always wanted to get rid of this top 2 primary, right? They want a closed system. Welcome to the Independent Voter Podcast. This is Cara McCormick. I'm here with my great friend, Shawn Griffiths, calling in from Chicago. I'm reporting from Maine, and we have a lot to talk about. Let's get right into it. Last night, there was a big debate in the California governor's race, all the candidates except for one on the stage. And I got to tell you, I listened to the first half hour, but then I fell asleep. Shawn, did you have a chance to catch it?
So I've been able to watch some segments of it online. Obviously, being in the East Coast and Central Time Zone, it's much later for us when that debate actually happened. So
Right.
I was able to catch some clips. It turned out like debates tend to. It's a lot of circus antics going on, a lot of fingerboarding, people making accusations at each other. It's a lot of mudslinging. It's a lot of and encouraged, of course, by the moderators, because that's just how the modern debate format is. It's whatever will get clicks, whatever will get views, and you saw that at least from the clips that I saw from last night's debate. So.
Yeah, I mean, it started, I guess, at 9:30 here. So I'm sort of trying to get to bed earlier because I've been waking up early. But I was able to hear all of them say, I'm the only one on this stage who, like, I heard each of them say that. And so I think it's really interesting. They're really trying to distinguish themselves from one another. And they're really trying to get all their points in and all the negatives in, because there's not that many more debates before the ballots actually have been mailed in California already. I think they started getting mailed out by the county offices on May the 4th. And what are we, on the 6th? So those ballots are hitting. Like, every single California voter gets mailed a ballot, which is really extraordinary. And it's game on. It's totally game on. And it seems like they're going after Becerra a little more because he's now perceived as the front runner. But I did want to talk to you, Shawn, about how the Democrats still are saying in all these fundraising emails that there's this chance that there's going to be 2 Republicans that make it into the top 2 in California. And they're using this, I guess, as sort of the pretext for trying to maybe get rid of the top 2 system in California altogether, which, as the authors of Top 2, we've got quite a stake in this little conversation. Let's talk more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, we already saw that the head of the Democratic Party in California has said that as a result of how this election has played out, that the nonpartisan top 2 system needs to be reevaluated or repealed. And when partisans say that, they always lean towards the repeal side of that. So, the concept of the jungle primary, people have heard that a lot, the term jungle primary, in all media outlets, whether, you're talking about MS Now or Fox News, both have used that terminology. And reformers, we don't really like using the term because the jungle primary was initially a phrase that was used for the primaries that Louisiana used to have, which were one general election, and then if no candidate got 50% of the vote or more than 50% of the vote, then there would be a runoff. Now, Louisiana has since moved to closed partisan primaries for House races, for other races, not for all of them, but for some of them. The top 2 system, though, in California is different. You put all candidates, all voters on the same ballot, and the top 2 vote getters, regardless of party, move on to a general election. There is guaranteed to be a general election, regardless of how much a candidate gets in the primary. And so there's a clear distinction for that. And attacking the system has been good for fundraising for the Democrats. I'm sure it'll turn out the vote a little more, scaring their voters into thinking that 2 Republicans will advance to November. But
actually, is it like, it's a mathematical almost a mathematical impossibility, right?
So
And so
it's interesting. So I last night I saw just a content creator on TikTok. They weren't a reporter or anyone. They were just somebody who does their research and stuff. And they were saying that there's like an 8% chance in California of that happening. Even with Swalwell in the race, it was very low. But when you had the top performing Democrat drop out because of those allegations against him, that raised a lot of Democrats up, particularly Becerra, who was struggling to get into the top spots. All of a sudden, he's the front runner. The IVP poll was the first to show that he was going to be in the lead in this race, and that same person had made a very good, what I think is a very good scenario outlook for this, and that is there's three possible scenarios in California. Either one, you have Steve Hilton, the Republican, face Javier Becerra. Two, Hilton will face Tom Steyer. Or three, Becerra and Steyer will face each other. It'll be a two Democrat general election, but we're not going to get two Republicans out. That whole narrative relied on the fact that there were so many undecided voters still. And so that's why you two Republicans were in the front runner spot.
because the
You had,
undecided was
yeah,
made up of
yeah,
mostly Democrats who now have picked a horse, maybe with Becerra or Steyer or Mahan, and that really like
mhm,
also maybe with Trump endorsing Hilton, that
yeah.
he's now basically gotten a little bit of a boost from that too.
Right. So you're seeing Steve Hilton get a bit of a bump from that, but you've also are seeing him actually hit his ceiling, which is around 18 to 19% in polls. That he hasn't been able to really breach that at all in any polls, whether it's IVP or any other poll in that.
Okay.
And what you're seeing is that Chad Bianco is actually dropping lower as other Democrats rise. So again, even the Democrats polling is refuting their own narrative that, oh my God, there could be two Republicans in the general election.
And what they really want, Shawn, is to basically get people so nervous that that's going to happen, get their base Democrats so nervous that that's going to happen, that it boosts the turnout. So there's a strategy behind saying, oh my God, there's going to be two Republicans and the Dems are going to be locked out of the California governor's office. Like, that's never going to happen, but they're saying that it is
Yeah.
because they're trying to juice the turnout. It's all strategy, always these things. And they're saying that they're going to get rid of this top two primary now because they've always wanted to get rid of this top two primary, right? They
Right.
want a closed system. So Rusty Hicks from the California Democratic Party, bless his heart, he wants to go back to having a closed system. But, as you and I both know, there's a third way forward, right? You don't have to repeal it. You don't have to keep it. You can move to top four, top five. And
Yeah.
that would be fairer, better, and just way more awesome, I have to say.
And we've seen the impact of Top Four already in Alaska. That is certainly the model that has led a lot of reformers to understand that when you have a primary system, it should be inclusive to everyone. It should be open to all. It should have a level playing field. So all voters have a chance to pick whatever candidate they want.
And
When
all
you,
candidates have a chance to run, right? So in this
right.
instance, we've got the head of the California Democratic Party, who is literally trying to get Democrats out of the race. Like,
Mhm.
that just doesn't seem normal or natural to me, that in a campaign and you're the head of this party and that you're literally trying to get people to drop out. That
Yeah.
just seems like, what?
And the funny thing is that Democrats in Alaska actually support the top four model there, because it
Of
makes those
course.
elections competitive. I mean, look at Mary Peltola. Mary Peltola is in a position where she's already won a statewide race for U.S. House.
Two,
She's two.
right?
Uh,
Two or three, right?
yeah, and she wasn't in Congress for long, but we could see her back in Washington again because she's running for U.S. Senate and has a
Yep.
very competitive race. Some polls have her ahead too. So what that system has created is not only a system where everyone gets to participate in the primary elections, regardless of your party, these taxpayer-funded elections, but in the general election, when you use ranked choice voting, you have this more choice voting system that is creating greater competition. It's leading to cross-partisan coalitions, not only on the campaign trail, but in the legislature. And you would even have legislative leaders say the same thing, that this system has been beneficial. And it's an example of you'll see party leaders come out in support of particular reforms when it's convenient for them to do that. You'll also see them oppose it when it's convenient as well. So, and we could
And
talk
they
about,
have their, that's okay too, right?
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with what, maybe I should say, like, he's just doing what he's incentivized to do. The parties are just doing what they're incentivized to do, and they're just all using the power that's available to them on the table, which kind of brings me to a different discussion, which is that Wes Moore, who's
Yeah.
the governor of
Mhm.
Maryland, was
Mhm.
was he on, was it Bill Maher that he was on?
Yeah, it was the Real Time with Bill Maher. No.
Yeah, I love that show.
And
So
so yeah, he spoke out in favor of, well, okay, so no, I need to clarify this. So he took jabs at the closed primary process by saying that clearly the largest segment of the electorate in the US right now are independents. 45% self-identify as independent voters. A closed partisan primary process ensures that these people are locked out of the most meaningful elections in the country. And of course,
and he
because of
expressed this very
yeah.
clearly, right? He
Yeah,
expressed it.
and you could say maybe he's being fed certain talking points, but he understands the systemic problems based on what he's saying, because he talked about how the mid-cycle gerrymandering fight is actually making the lack of competition in U.S. politics worse. Right now, we're looking at 94% of U.S. House races won't be competitive this election cycle, which means that in closed primary states or in states that make it difficult for independent voters to vote, rather than just letting them go to the polls or fill out a mail-in ballot and vote in these taxpayer-funded contests. It means that since they're locked out of that process, they can't vote until November, and by then the election in most cases has already been decided because of how safe these districts are. And I do find and reformers jumped on this. They praised
Excited,
Wes
right? I
Moore.
was
They were
excited.
very excited. They were very excited to hear this. Our friends at Open Primaries has been posting his clips on it, has been talking about how he's endorsing open primaries. But one thing that's important to note is that he didn't actually say he promotes or endorses open primary reform. And his office, right after that appearance on the Bill Maher show, came out and said, well, actually, the governor doesn't, he's not in favor of
Of
reforming the
opening
primary
Maryland's
rules. Yeah.
primaries,
And,
right?
and yeah, because Maryland is a closed primary state. This is why
Yeah.
a lot of primary reform advocates were excited, because he is the governor of a closed primary state. And when you think
And
about
he's
our friend,
awesome. He's a great governor. He's doing really well. He might even run for president. So, like, when I heard it, Shawn, I was just like, this is amazing. And
mhm,
then, of course, I read the
yeah.
next day that the spokesperson from the office had called in and was like, never mind. He didn't really mean what he said. And it's good. What's good for the goose is not good for the gander. Isn't that the old expression?
Well, and so again, like our friends at Open Primaries, I understand why they're very excited about this. They have a lawsuit in Maryland challenging the closed primary system, and
Oh.
based on legal precedent and recent legal precedent, it's likely that lawsuit won't go anywhere in the courts. But if you have a governor on your side that can help, resolve this legal dispute with closed primaries in one way or another, that is a positive. And
It's
interesting,
massive. The
yeah.
power that the governor has in Maryland is massive.
Yeah.
So there's the governor, there's the
Mhm.
Senate president, and there's the Speaker of the House. And those
Yeah.
are really, and maybe the chairman of whatever committee decides like how the vote, how we do the vote, right?
Yeah.
So and whoever the chair of that committee is, or if it's a joint committee, I don't know how it works in Maryland, but those four people have the power 100% of the time to change Maryland's system and to open it up to let independent voters vote in primaries. They have all the power. And so for him to come out and say that was for it, and knowing that he's
Mhm.
running for president, and that I really wonder, like, boy, do I wish I could be a bird on the wall when
Right.
whoever it was like, what the hell did he
Yeah.
just say?
Well,
Because
and
really,
'cause
like, when he
yes.
said it, it was so genuine, Shawn. It was so genuine what he was saying. It really seemed like
Right.
he got that we have a problem where
Mhm.
independent voters who make up 45% of the electorate are completely locked out of primaries across this country, right?
Mhm.
That we all pay for.
Yeah.
And he just seemed like, wow, this is really going to open up this new possibility. And I'm a little sad to see it.
Well,
And also
and
just very curious
yeah,
about what went on.
it does get you very curious about where he stands because he did appear on Bill Maher, and then his office kind of walked back his statements, and then our friends at Open Primaries, they posted another video of him appearing on a radio show in Maryland. It was one of those that does a streaming of the broadcast center, so
Yeah.
there is video of it. And in that, he said basically the same thing that he did on Bill Maher. So you're seeing this kind of back and forth. And in that, he clarified that this is his personal views. And so
Okay. Okay.
when I look at that, I'm like, okay, well, at a certain point, open primaries and your support for reform isn't one of those things you can really walk like this narrow tightrope on. Like either you support it or you don't, and you can't just
Well, they
say
totally, yes, yes. And this is the thing. It's like Janet Mills in Maine, right? In front of the veil, they say they support it,
yeah,
right? She says, I'm for this. I support it. But
right,
behind the scenes, they do everything they can to stop it. And it's really, it's really sort of alarming to see it so happen so blatantly, but also at the same time, like, as you know, Shawn, I'm a huge supporter of, even if it seems like it's bad news, it's good news because
yeah,
it's everything's getting illuminated for all the people to see, right? So when there are these obstacles, it's really good to have them come out into the open and not exist totally behind closed doors. This is our democracy, right?
yeah.
It belongs to us. It belongs to the people in Maryland. It belongs to those people, those independents in Maryland who might want to vote for the governor. It belongs to them.
Yeah. And it is interesting because, I tried to look for any previous statements that Wes Moore had made on the subject of close primaries, open primaries. I couldn't find anything before that Bill Maher appearance, which makes this even more kind of interesting, the timing. But also, it's not entirely, negative news to say, oh, well, there's mixed messages going on, because he did get the message out there. It's
He
clear that,
totally, you can tell he understands it, right?
yeah,
You can
it's
tell he
clear,
gets it, and he gets how potent it is as a political
right,
message. He understands the power of what he's saying. It's very popular what he's saying
right. The
in
the
his
more people talk
personal
about it, the
opinion.
more people are educated on it, right? But
Amen. Yeah.
there's also that other side of it that says, well, clearly the people in power, they know what the problem is. They know the systemic issues. So why not move to fix it? That ultimately is the question. Why, if you are going to say all these things, if you are going to come out and say closed primaries need to be reevaluated, which is what he said, and if you are going to come out and condemn gerrymandering, then why don't follow that up in policy? Because even Wes Moore, after the passage of Prop 50 in California, was encouraging Maryland to get involved in the gerrymandering thing,
And now
which
I'm
made
sure
his
those
statements all the weirder. Is that, okay, well, he understands the problem, but he's also like, at what
he's
point
a
does
normal
yeah,
politician.
at
He's
what
a
point does
normal
personal belief turn into policy position? Like that's ultimately what it comes down to. And are
Yeah.
you just pandering to independents because you know how they are the deciders in presidential elections? They're increasingly becoming deciders, even in states that were once considered partisan strongholds, like Texas, where you're seeing independents in Texas have an enormous impact on those statewide races in 2026. In
And what's
Georgia,
happening in Texas?
yeah,
They're trying to shut down the
and
primaries,
they're
right? The
trying to shut
Republican
down the
Party
primaries,
is
right?
trying to close that primary in Texas,
Yeah.
which is also open. They're trying to close it. So basically, the partisans, the leaders of the parties, the governors,
Mhm.
they don't really want to do this. They would
Right.
much rather close it down. And what we're trying to say is, don't close it down, improve it, open it up more.
Yeah.
That's what we're fighting for at Independent Voter Project for sure, is to open
Mhm.
it up even more and make it more fair and more competition. And it's great. It's great that this is happening. That more sunlight, right? More sunlight, more sunlight. So the Supreme Court's decision in Louisiana versus Callis came out this week, which is basically the culmination of decades of rulings about the Voting Rights Act, and it changes the Southern election districts so that no longer will there be districts that have to have a majority of voters of color. At least that's how I understand it, Shawn. Do you know much about this decision that just came down?
So, when it comes to the whole Voting Rights Act thing, there's a lot of history to it that I'm still not familiar with. But I will say that obviously this decision, as we see, is very controversial. It's already having an impact on what states are thinking about redistricting more. So you have states like Tennessee and Alabama that are trying to get into this fight. Louisiana,
Right.
after this, the governor just signed an executive order to cancel their primary elections the day before early voting was set to begin. Some votes had already been
Unbelievable.
cast.
That's
And
so crazy.
as far as
So
I'm aware, that's like they're going to be allowed to do that, at least for now, so they could redraw
no
their.
kidding. So he literally called the election off. The governor of Louisiana canceled the election, everybody, because of this major Voting Rights Act case, which, if we just explain for the viewers, it's basically the Supreme Court struck down the redistricting map in the state, calling it racially discriminatory, right? It's a Louisiana congressional map
Mhm.
that a group of voters who described themselves as non-African Americans had challenged, and they said it was unconstitutional racial gerrymandering. And the Supreme Court, by a vote of 6-3, left in place a ruling by a federal court that had barred the state of Louisiana from using that map,
Mhm.
which had created in Louisiana a second majority Black district.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating what's happening, but even more interesting, I just think, is that they've literally now canceled the election as a result of this. I've never heard
Yeah,
of an
so
election getting
I
canceled.
mean, basically the justices, at least the majority of the court, was saying that in very rare or no circumstances could race be determined, and that means either drawing the maps to discriminate again or to specifically suppress the vote of people of color, but also you can't just draw maps to just giving a district because of the racial background of that community. And I've friends and people who've talked about it, and they say they kind of see both sides to this. That you don't want to have these intentionally segregated districts, but also at the same time, you want to make sure that if you have a community that is majority Black, majority Latino, majority any of these other minority groups, that they have a chance to pick their representatives, and that's tends to be the side of the argument that I fall on. Like if you have a community that is majority Black, then they should have an opportunity to decide for themselves who's going to represent them.
For sure. And it's very interesting how this is being applied by the Supreme Court, not in terms of parties. So the parties do have the right to determine the voters in their district, but if it's racial, then it's okay for partisans to draw the maps, but it's not okay if they draw the maps using a racial screen, but they can draw the maps using a partisan screen. So
Yeah.
they're allowed to do it when it comes to like packing a whole bunch of Republicans into a district to make sure that a Republican wins, but they're not allowed to do it when it comes to packing a whole bunch of people who are a certain race into a district. Am I following it right?
Yeah, I mean, so far the courts have said that they won't get involved in anything that is partisan gerrymandering. So
That's fascinating.
well, yeah, and I mean that's why we see the mid-cycle gerrymandering fight that we see going on right now continue, and why it continues to escalate is because the parties know that they can get away with it, and they can continue to do this in places like Virginia, and then in Florida, and then maybe now if Tennessee and Alabama they redraw their maps as a result of this decision, Illinois, New York may jump in, right?
Hey, Chad, how are you?
Sorry I'm late. I ran in here, heard you talking about the VRA, and I was like, I got to get out of this meeting and jump in. So,
I love it. I love it.
what do you
Yeah,
guys been talking about?
we needed a lawyer. We needed you because we were talking about the Voting Rights Act and basically the Supreme Court's decision this week to say that those maps could not be racially gerrymandered, and the fact that the governor was like, okay, we're going to cancel the election then. And like, has there ever been an election that has gotten canceled before? Like they were voting already, right? They were already voting and they were like, stop, never mind.
I mean, it's bizarre, but I mean, you know, the conversations around the issues, obviously a lot of the election reform community, it's framed in, you know, oh, they gutted the VRA and this is the race, right? So there's, you know, I never say I'm a good attorney, but I think the flip side of the issue is you could say, okay, we had the ability for the VRA allowed to use race-based so that you could have, right, you made sure black communities are represented by a black representative, Latinos,
Right.
and so on, right? And
Right.
so I think I'm articulating the arguments of the court to, you don't have to agree with it, but at least understand the perspective is that, look, in all these gerrymandering wars and stuff, it's that one party has utilized that as a partisan basis to gerrymander, right? So under the guise of protecting African Americans or Latinos, they're
That it's really become
gerrymandering their
partisan?
right? That was just being used as a rationale. So it wasn't the primary. In other words, the purpose of the gerrymandering wasn't to bring the representation. The purpose of it was to get another seat for one of the parties, right? And so that's the side of the argument of saying we're at a different place in history. There was a time when we needed that, right? And that now it's being utilized as this partisan tool. I think I think the more fundamental question here is like, why are we allowing partisan gerrymandering? Like, we need to get to the core of it, right? The racial issue is being injected within the fight between two parties, right?
Yeah.
Where probably, you know, there's probably a 90-10 issue. Yeah, most people think everybody deserves proper representation, right? But what's happening is you're getting the pulled between the partisan sides of saying, okay, well, we, you know, one side saying, oh, we need to have more representation of people from this color, you know, because they're not adequately represented. And the other side saying, well, you're not doing it because you want a person of a color. You're just doing it because you're using that as a tool to get another seat for your party, right?
But Chad, that's my question is like, they're allowed to do it if it's partisan, right? Hasn't the court said like, we're not going to interfere. You partisans just have at it when it comes to gerrymandering. It's all you.
I agree. That's the
Right?
problem. That's the core of the problem. That's my point, right?
Like, it seems like this issue will not be resolved until the courts are willing to weigh in on when is too far when it comes to partisan gerrymandering, because now we're seeing a lot of states like Tennessee and Alabama, Louisiana also wanting to redraw their districts now after this court decision so they can further their partisan advantage. And that just further escalates it. And then you hear that Illinois and New York may retaliate if they do that, and then they join in. It's just further escalation.
It's a never-ending battle where at the the point you get to the end of the line, I always say you got to ask the question, where does the right to vote derive? Right?
Yep. Does it derive from the citizenship, from the fact that I'm a citizen of this state, of this country, right? Or is it something else? Is it based on what party I'm in or what color I am? Or
correct? Is it because I'm, because of my gender? Is it because of my sexual preferences? Is it because of my color? Is it because, like, our argument in independent voter projects, lawsuit challenging closed primaries, say it's none of that. It's your right as a citizen, period.
Right. I'm a citizen of this nation. I can go register to vote, to participate, right? And I should be able to have a vote that matters. Right. And I should be able to vote in all the elections that are meaningful. Like, this is so not the way it is, though, guys. This is really, we have a long way to go.
The point is, the courts have said, right, and our amendments have said we have to have equal protection, right? And then the 15th Amendment, we have to have equal, right? The irony is that we've had all these protections on these class bases, which are good, like we needed to protect them, but there's a class remaining that doesn't get the strict scrutiny from the court. And that's
why not? Why not? That's
because it hasn't been fought, other than our independent voter projects, brought a case, but it's relatively recent. It's only been 10 years, right? Now other people are starting to bring cases of asking the question, don't I have a fundamental class? In my class, as somebody who refused to join a party, I am not represented at all. It's not that I get a little bit of representation. I'm not represented at all in some of these states. And that's the question, right?
Yeah.
You can classify us by all this stuff, right? But what about us as individuals, right?
Right. So it's a really cool interesting discussion. And I was saying to Shawn before you got on, Chad, that, even if it seems like there's, one step forward, two steps back in some of this work, like the fact that the light is being shined on all of this is good. Like, even though it shows all the dysfunction, it still is really good that like it still shows that things are working, things are churning, things are moving. Nothing's static, right? We get to change it.
You see a whole new conversation developing, different people coming to the space and coming to this position, right? Like of wanting to talk about this stuff, right?
Well, and Wes Moore talked about it.
We talked about Wes Moore on Bill Maher. The interesting thing about that, though, is that independents have increasingly become a subject of conversation on Bill Maher's show. Week after week, you're seeing people
he probably listens to our podcast.
Yes, maybe. Yeah. Week after week, you're seeing either guests that represent the independent space, or you're seeing guests like Wes Moore, who are, more partisan, who at least they understand the systemic issues. They have to walk this little tightrope, though, right now, where personal belief and policy don't intersect. And one thing I was telling Cara is that, in order for nonpartisan reform to work, in order to see it go further, you can't play both sides of this. You have to if your personal belief is that closed primaries are a problem, that they need to be reevaluated, and if you really want to endorse the idea of open primaries, which Wes Moore hasn't explicitly said that he endorses open primaries, he's just said that closed primaries need to be reevaluated. If that, though, is his position. Yeah, well, and clearly after his office's response, you see there's a clear distinction between endorsement and saying, well, this needs to be reevaluated, right?
I really like open primaries, but I'm scared of party leadership, so I'm going to try to say it in a way I don't get killed.
Right. The only way
come on
for
in,
you,
Wes Moore. Like, that's what I want to say, Governor. Come on in. The
on,
water's warm. You got to join us. Like, go with it.
Because if his goal is to cater to independent voters, he's going to get a lot of support for independent voters if he supports their equal voting rights.
And he knows it.
The primary yet.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think we're getting close to wrapping up. I know I jumped in late, so
great to see you.
It's good to see you both. I know you're working hard. We relaunched the Independent Voter Project website. Check it out. And we're getting close to relaunching the IVN website. There's so much going on. Sign up for updates on IVN. Subscribe to the podcast. Wherever you get your news, join us on social media. You can find us at Independent Voter. We're kind of growing fast. It's nice. It's all the feedback we're getting on emails and the comments online. Most of them are positive. Sometimes,
something like
we've been called
7 million views on a post this week.
Yeah, we got 7 million on one, and then we had 10 million the week before, and it's
wow.
So stay tuned, sign up for our newsletter, join us on social media, and we'll see you again next time. This is the Independent Voter Podcast, sponsored by the Independent Voter Project and produced by OLAS Media. Remember, you can always find the Independent Voter Podcast or the How It Really Works series at ivn.us. Follow and subscribe at olasmedia.com.
OLAS Media.